Everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hi, hello, welcome to yet another installment of my Friends Pick My TBR. If you are new here, this is a series that I've been doing for a very long time at this point. Specific months throughout the year where I let my friends have access to my entire physical TBR and let them pick what I read for a month. I do this every February and every July because it is a great way for me to kind of reset my reading at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year so that I can do this kind of push or purge of a number of books to get them off my physical TBR and actually actively read my TBR. This month, my friends, we have 12 books to read, but it is not only 12 books, it is 6,000 pages to read because my friends chose violence. This month, I did the same thing that I did earlier in February. I gave my friends the link to my owned board on Storygraph. Every time I read a book that I physically own off of that list, I remove it from that list so that I have a fresh, exact number of what my TBR looks like, my physical TBR looks like. And so I gave them the access to that list, launched it into the group chat, and also opened it up to partners if they wanted to participate who aren't in the group chat, and I also sent it to Julie and Allie, two of my online friends. 12 books, my friends. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are over 800 pages long. One of them is over 1,000 pages long. And no, it is not a Brandon Sanderson. I don't even know how many unread books I have on my shelves. I think I culled the number down to in the 150 range because when I went and started planning for this video, planning, i.e. going into my Storygraph board and making sure there weren't any books on that owned shelf that I had already read, planning for it, and also because at that moment I decided to venture into Facebook Marketplace selling of books, because in Canada we don't have Pango or Vinted or anything like that, so Facebook Marketplace is all we have. I purged a bunch of books off of my shelves and thus shrunk my TBR down a fair bit, quite honestly. And these 12 books are just gonna help me shrink it further. I'm gonna go through it real quick, rapid fire, and as I read the books, I will give you more of a synopsis as to what they are. You know the drill if you've been here for a while. Okay, first up, we got the 1,000-page tome of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. My friend Sophie ended up picking this one. And we have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. My friend Samuel, who is also partnered to Hannah, her boyfriend, picked The Name of the Wind. Quote, because I think she'll hate it, which I find so funny. Then we have Caitlin, who didn't pick just one, she picked 2 books because she's a queen. She picked one of the biggest ones and also a novella, so that's okay. We love the variety. She picked Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. Love that. And also The City Inside by Samet Basu. So glad to have this on the list for an in-between palette cleanser, if you will. We also have A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. This was picked by my friend Yeleni. Romance, very lovely. Then we also have Pillar of Ash by Hannah Long, another smaller fantasy. This is picked by Julie. Next up, we have Latsaway by Darcy Littlebadger. This is picked by Allie. We also have Little Fish by Casey Plett. This is picked by SJ. We have A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, which is picked by Sophia. We have Inheritance by Christopher Paolini, picked by Hannah, on brand because she picked Brissinger in February, and now she's helping me finish this series because I really should have finished it a long time ago. And we also have Artemis by Andy Weir, which was picked by my friend Tamsin, also the girlfriend to Sophie. And finally, we have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which was picked by Alexander. I don't know what I'm gonna read first. I did ask my TikTok to tell me what I should read first, so I'm gonna go look at the comments in that video to see if anyone has commented anything, or I might just decide to dive in with one of the tomes because there's a lot of really big books on this TBR, and I kind of want to space them out so I'm not reading 4 over 800 pages books in 2 weeks. Anyways, friends, buckle up. This is gonna be a long vlog because they usually are. Get yourself a snack, get yourself a drink, and we're gonna have fun. A lot of really good books. I have a feeling this is going to be a great TBR.
Honey?
Because I'm very excited about all of these books, so.
You've got a big storm coming.
Let's see how it goes. Hello friends, happy July 2nd. So, the results are in. My TikTok video has the most comments for me starting a lots away, but my brain says, Jenna, you should start with one of the tomes. So I put up a poll on my Instagram for Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward and this 1,000-pager because I have the audiobook for both of those. available right now. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to start Ye Olde Tome, whichever one that my Instagram is currently winning. I'll check in a minute. And then I'm also going to read Alatsue like in between it. I'm over halfway through. Just. I don't understand the point of this book. So, okay. I've been reading this book for a couple days. I've been trying to keep a good pace of it because it's so large. And I know if I don't just keep my pace up, I'm gonna just lose all momentum and stop reading it, which I don't want to do. Well, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to, jeopardize or hurt myself in doing that. Nothing happens in this book, which also so much happens in this book, but like not enough to keep me interested. So this is, how the fuck can I explain this? This is a modern take. No, this is a classic book, but written in modern times because it's by Susanna Clarke, right? This is as though she decided to emulate Charles Dickens. Like, she is writing so many fucking words about nothing, all right? Like, it's just faffing about. It's men at the beginning of this who are studying magic but not actually doing any magic, and then it's this introduction of this one man named Mr. Norrell who actually does practical magic. But does he? Because I don't see no magic being done except for one moment when he was talking about bringing all these statues to life, and he did it as like proof that he could do magic. But it feels so fake to me because like the magic system in here is systemless. It doesn't make any fucking sense, because there is no explanation as to what the magic is or can do or what the fuck it is, all right? We also have fairies in here that I don't understand why they're there. Like, the amount of people who study magic in this book, for that then to not have any structure or any rules that are very clear, bothers me so fucking much. I don't know what this magic can do. I don't know what this magic can't do. We've brought people back to life, and we've also animated statues. That's it. That's all we've done. But like, there's so much talk about men wanting to see other men perform magic, and then they never actually follow through with doing like a quick like little magic spell to just prove they can do it. So I don't understand even the components of how they even do the magic. And that's the whole point of this fucking book, is that there's magic coming back to England. So Mr. Norrell, basically in this moment at the beginning when he introduces himself, he tricks all the other men who claim themselves to be magicians to essentially be like, well, if I do perform magic, then you all cannot call yourselves magicians anymore. I will be the only magician. And he does that, so he becomes the only magician. And then, I am not even shitting you. What page is it? 161. That's when we meet Jonathan Strange, who is the first name on this list. I am 522 pages in. I could not tell you what is happening in this book because nothing is actually happening. We are just following the years of these people studying magic, buying books, traveling, going to war. Nothing is happening. Like, nothing of substance is actually happening in this story. It's not enough to keep me captivated. I don't understand why it's 1,000 fucking pages, because oh my god, I read this on a fucking TikTok. But this passage, okay? In the chapter house, there were stone canopies with many little stone heads with strange headgear that all chattered and cackled together.
There were marvelous stone carvings of 100 English trees: hawthorn, oak, blackthorn, wormwood, cherry, and bryony. Mr. Sigmundus found 2 stone dragons no longer than his forearm, which slipped one after the other over and under between stone hawthorn branches, stone hawthorn leaves, stone hawthorn roots, and stone hawthorn tendrils. They moved, it seemed, with as much ease as any other creature, and yet the sound of so many stone muscles moving together under a stone skin that scraped stone ribs, that clashed against a heart made out of stone, and the sound of stone claws rattling over stone branches was quite intolerable, and Mr. Sigmundus wondered that they could bear it. He observed a little cloud of grey dust such as attends the work of a stone cutter that surrounded them and rose up in the air. He believed that if the spell allowed them to remain in motion for any length of time, they would rid themselves.
Stone leaves, like, it just, there's so many words. And for what? For what? There is no point to this book. I have asked on Instagram if the second half gets better, if it picks up, if it's even worth continuing, because there is no point to this. Like, I was hoping for so long in this book that from having read Piranesi, knowing that this is the same author and this is a goddamn tome, Piranesi was doing something. The story itself, you had to read it in its entirety to get the whole picture. because it was doing something. It was interesting. It was catching your attention, and it was actually fucking interesting. I really enjoyed Piranesi, but this doesn't make any fucking sense. Why? There's no point to the story. And I am a fucking English major. I love reading classic novels when they have a point to them. They have a story to tell. This is just rambling nonsense for 1,000 pages. So I don't know if I'm going to DNF it now. I've been listening to the audiobook for like a half hour now or more, and I just couldn't care less. And oh my fuck, the footnotes. The footnotes in this fucking book are so egregious. They are so long and they mean nothing to the actual story. They don't add anything to the story. They don't do anything except for take up page after page after page. When then like you read like a 4-page long footnote and have to go back to where you were 4 pages previously to even continue the actual narrative. Maybe I will DNF it. I don't want to puss out on the first book though, which is why I made it to the halfway point. I don't want to chicken out on this fucking book because it's the longest book on this TBR. I'm trying, guys. I am trying so hard to like this book. I thought I was gonna love it. It sounds like everything I would love because it's written like a Jane Austen, Charles Dickens like classic novel that meets like Neil Gaiman and the Discworld with Terry Pratchett's Discworld. But it's given that kind of whimsy, but it's not whimsical enough. It's not weird enough, and it has no substance and has no feet to land on. And I am so annoyed. It's just pointless, and I am so annoyed by it. So that's where I'm at so far in this TBR. I'm this far through. Can I even get... Can I do this? Can I do this? Hello, friends. It is officially July 6th, and I have reading news, both good and both disappointing. After my rant about this bad boy, I posted a TikTok and an Instagram story asking people's opinions whether or not I should just keep going with this, if it was worth keeping going. One person who's read it, who has come into my TikTok and is like, it's not, if you hate it, stop. And I was like, iconic, amazing. And everyone else is advocating for a DNF. So I'm on page 522 and I'm gonna put this down. I'm not gonna remove the bookmark yet because there's a little something in me that's like, what if I do enjoy the ending? I don't think it's worth reading another 500 pages though. Like, it's just not worth it. So it's gonna be a soft DNF for now. I will decide before the end of this month if I do want to continue it because it's for this video. But what a wild first read for this video. I definitely, I tried my fucking hardest with that one and it just really was not doing it. Anyways, after that, last night I decided to pick up the palette cleanser book that I had already lined up for this, which is A Lat's Away, and I ended up finishing it today. I spent like 3 hours reading it because it's a YA book. It's very light. It's like less than 400 pages and it's formatted really spaced out nicely. And this was really lovely little book. It was quite bright, even though the themes and the content are dark. It's lighthearted, and our main character just kind of has a fun vibe. Like, she stole my entire heart. Ellie stole my entire soul. And so this is an alternative America where magic is like real, and it's shaped by ancestral magics and knowledge of its indigenous and immigrant groups. And Ellie Latsaway herself can raise the dead. She can raise ghosts, the spirits of dead animals. And she's got her bestie, her ghost dog, Kirby, who is fucking made me cry at the end of this, I'm not gonna lie. And at the beginning of this, her cousin passes away in what is believed to be a car crash. Immediately, she is visited by his ghost in a dream as he's like dying on the operating table as they're trying to save his life. And he says that it was murder. It was not an accident. So this kind of kicks off Ellie and her family kind of going to visit her cousin's wife and like stay with her and help her with her new baby, like help her grieve and stuff like that. And also it's Alatsue and her friend Jay like investigating this crime and investigating this one person who her cousin blamed and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of gave me like, I don't know, it gave me like a summer movie when I was a young kid. Like, it gave me those vibes, like a movie that I would watch that is about summer and these two kids like investigating something in a small town in the heat of summer. And it just I don't know, like they were in the heat of Texas somewhere, like eating. There's a scene in here where they were eating like ice cream and they literally couldn't keep up because the ice cream was melting so fast. And I was like, this is such a perfect little summery book, which is so bizarre because this front cover gives me winter. So I don't know what the fuck that's about. It's not wintry at all. It's set in the middle of summer. So this cover is very misleading because I had originally saved this in my mind for like a winter month read because this cover is so wintry. And I understand it's because it's a bunch of ghost dogs running around, but like Elatsway on the cover is in a little jacket. So I assumed that it was, and it's like, it's got like the icy blue. I assumed it was wintry. It is not. It's very summery. It's very warm. And I enjoyed this a whole heck of a lot. Like, Elatsway herself is so lighthearted and she's funny. And it's just this, I don't know, this book has so much to say about the violence against Indigenous people and these moments of like being watched, and how Ellie herself, there's a moment in here where her dad and her are traveling across country and she goes into this rest stop which has a museum which has a bunch of fossils. So she goes and gets a fossil because she wants to like learn about this creature, and she can raise the little creature's ghost from the spirit world if she like learns enough about it, because it's a ancient creature. She's really cool powers. And there's also vampires in here, and there's like fairy circles that they use to transport things. Like, it's such an interestingly urban fantasy because for the most part it felt like I was reading a contemporary novel, besides the like ghost dog that was with Elatsway, besides Kirby. And then the casual mention of the teleportation circles, or like they're fairy circles, or like someone in here has like weird twisted healing magic, or her best friend Jay can make light because he's a descendant of someone with light powers. Like, it felt so contemporary because it was so like, it's just set in America but with magic. It just felt like a teen summer novel, which was very fun and exactly kind of what I wanted. But yeah, it deals with such dark things because, as I was saying, I totally went around the track, but when Ellie is visiting this rest stop, one of the cashiers, like, as she walks up and is like, oh, like, is there a museum here? I want to go see the fossils. And the lady's like, yeah, it's like $5, go through there. She pays, and then like the cashier ladies like turns the security monitor toward Elatsway and is like, doesn't say anything, but it's just like points at it like, we can fucking see you, like, don't try anything. Throughout this, it's like they're being watched by the locals of this town that they're in a very outwardly like aggressive way. It has so much commentary on the violence that is so often overlooked against Indigenous people without being like hit you over the head with it. Like, I described it to Allie just in a message recently today. It was not subtly subtle. Like, it was like it you knew what it was doing, but it was also kind of subtle about it, but it also wasn't subtle at all in some moment. Like, it just, I don't know, it did it really well. So I enjoyed this. I don't know when I'm gonna rate it, and I will run it through Compile at some point. But yeah, Allie actually picked this one too, so that works. We did this little breath of fresh air after trying to slog through Mr. Norrell. Truly. Hello, friends. It's been a second. It is officially July 13th, and I have reading news, specifically with The Familiar, and with Legacy of Ash, and with The Pillar of Ash. It's a threefer, my friends. So first up, I guess I should say, Legacy of Ash. I am currently 215 pages into this one. It's giving a less good version of something kind of like Game of Thrones mixed with The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. It's giving that like epic old man fantasy vibe, but with, I'm just not connecting to anything in this story. I'm just here for the ride, I guess. I really couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you about any single person in this. I couldn't tell you about what's actually happening. I don't know, really. But again, I am only 200 and some odd pages into it, so maybe it'll change in the next chunk. But yes, this is the tome that I'm currently working through. In the meantime, I decided a couple days ago to pick up The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I read like 60% in one sitting, and then today I finished it, but fuck was this boring. Like, I went into this being like, okay, I know it's historical fiction. I know it's historical fantasy, sort of. There's like touches of magic all throughout it. And usually that's an okay genre for me. It's not one of my favorite fantasy genres, but like usually it works for me. And because it's Leigh Bardugo, I was like, oh, the books that I read of hers, fucking bangers. Maybe not like, I didn't really like Hellbent that much, the sequel to Ninth House, but usually with Leigh's books, her writing is so good and so entrancing that it's fine, and I, like, you know, you finish them really quickly, or you just, I don't know, you get swept up in the story. This was fucking boring. Like, it gave, the whole time I was reading it, I was like, okay, I can liken this to how I was feeling when I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, which is so funny because I know a lot of people really love that book. I really didn't. It really didn't do anything for me. It was boring. It just, no. So it likened to that meets Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. And I know that one is also not very liked. And I enjoyed that one when I read it, but like it was such a forgettable book. And I think the only reason that it's giving that flavor is like, as I was reading this, the beginning of this really gave me the same feeling and scene descriptions as Kingdom of the Wicked did by Carrie Maniscalco. Maybe it's the fact that they're both set in, like, this is set in Madrid, but like that one's set in like Roman, Italian area. So like it kind of gave a similar vibe. I will also say, I know Leigh Bardugo is kind of in the gutter right now because of her absolutely abhorrent reaction and response to someone asking her about the genocide in Palestine right now, because she is Jewish, and so I don't know, she just couldn't say, like, I don't agree with genocide or some shit. I haven't actually looked up her statements or anything, but I know people are mad about her answer because it was such a non-answer. That's what I've heard on the internet anyways. Don't take my word very strongly because I haven't looked into it myself. And honestly, reading this is so heavily Jewish and so heavily, like, which is not a bad thing, I should say. I am not anti-Jewish in any kind of form. I am specifically anti-Zionist and against genocide, as you should be if you're following my channel. Hi. Welcome. Did you know I support the people in Palestine who are currently under occupation and trying to escape a genocide? Anyways, the way that this was written, with the inclusion of all of the Jewish underlying stuff in here, it was very like the Jews are being persecuted because that's what this era is. Like, it's the era of the Inquisition. It was never really fulfilled because of the Jewish characters in here. Like, there was never that fear. And like the fear of witchcraft and being burnt at the stake wasn't also a fear in here either, because these people were showing like true magic. And yet they were like, it was okay if they claimed it was a gift of God. So it was very like the Jews are being persecuted in this, but it wasn't giving any actual proof of that. The only proof of any danger in here toward people with magical powers were if they were claimed to be or thought to be or were heretics. So yeah, because there's a person in here, there's a character in here who her moniker is the Holy Child. And also this is a competition book, which no one ever says. Like, it's not to the level of competition books that like fantasy has made us out to expect anymore. But okay, so this, I should explain what this is about. So this follows Lucia, who is a scullion for a once wealthy woman who wants to be wealthy again. And one day, and Lucia, our scullion, can do little like tricks and charms and stuff to fix little things. Like, if she burns the bread, she can fix that. She can like just sing something in multiple languages all mixed together that she's learned, and it'll like fix the bread. It's like a little trick that she's got. Little bits of magic here and there. She can fix things and she can do little things. Throughout the book, her magic gets more and more undefined and has no limits. I don't actually know what her tricks are. Like, it made sense at the beginning because I was like, oh, she can do little household stuff. And then by the end, she's making fucking trees do her bidding. And I'm like, that's too much. Like, there has to be rules to this, because it felt very like Deus Ex Machina at the end almost. I know that's not quite the right term for this, but like it felt like, oh, we need to fix the situation so magic will help us. So anyways, she gets found out from her keeper woman, Valencia, or whatever the fuck her name is, that she has this magic, and then she's basically used like a show pony to bring people to the house so that like this woman and her husband can get more favor with people and like maybe get more money and make more business deals and stuff like that. And then she catches the attention of someone who's trying to find, I don't even know. She catches the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. And this king is running this tourney type thing to like find a champion. For what reason, I don't know. It's never explained. I know he wants to like gain the king's favor again, but like the reason why he needs a champion doesn't make any sense. Like there's no war that they're fighting at the moment. Like there's nothing to that extent, you know? And she gets pulled into this because she wants power. She's a very ambitious human being, our main character, Lucia. She's very ambitious. She's very driven to just get power, even though she's represented very meekly at the beginning. It like immediately you flip a coin in the next scene and she's like mouthing off to her superiors and doing all this kind of stuff, which felt very jarring to me. It didn't feel realistic at all. I liked the characterization of Lucia, but she just didn't give anything other than this like sharp bitch like all the time to the people around her. And I'm like, okay, like I understand you're being very driven and stuff, but like you've also been a servant for your whole life. You should know respect at least, and you should know like the rules of being around these people because you've been around them your whole life. So why are you mouthing off? And like I didn't understand that very much. And in this, she ends up meeting this Don Victor. Don Victor becomes her like patron in a way, but for his own means, because he has somebody who is his servant essentially, who doesn't really have a specific role. He's just this guy who's there, and his nickname is the Scorpion. I don't remember how to say that because it's said in Spanish a bunch of times and I don't know how to say. I don't remember what it is, but it's Santangel. That's how you say his name. Fuck if I remember. I don't know. Santangel is this person who's been cursed for years, almost vampiric, but not really, to be immortal. Like he's tied to this family and he's the typical white-haired love interest. He's a little dangerous. People don't trust him because he does a lot of dirty shit, and of course he's cursed and he has all this like rumors about him and whatever. So of course he's the love interest for Lucia. But this book was just so nothing. It gave me nothing. It didn't even have the good Leigh Bardugo writing that I've come to love in her other books. Like as I said, like that was the one thing that I was going in here for, like being like, okay, I don't mind if it's like historical fiction and I don't mind if it's slower because I know Leigh Bardugo's writing is going to keep me attached. It did not. It was boring. And honestly, like the book itself was predictable. It was kind of formulaic. And it didn't do anything, which is honestly such a disappointment coming from such a like quote unquote powerhouse author as Leigh Bardugo. Like she's so well beloved with all of her books and she's created such wonderful worlds, but I think this was kind of a failure on her part. Like it just really didn't do anything for me. So that's sad, but finish this today. And then I've also decided to give Pillar of Ash a go, which thank fuck for Hannah Long immediately, because like the few books that I have been reading, the soft DNF, which is probably just going to be a DNF for Jonathan Strange, 522 fucking pages into that, and it was giving me nothing. And then starting this one, and it was just like, it's not giving me anything. I'm 200 and some odd pages into it, and I just don't know what's happening. I don't really know what to care about. It's just the only like fairly okay book that I've read so far is Lad's Way, because everything else is just kind of middle and not good. But this, oh my god, guys, I was so scared to go into another Hannah Long, because like H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke and Temple of No God are some of my favorite fantasy books of all time. Those are the first two books in the standalone companion series. I liked Barrow of Winter, the third one, but it just didn't have the same flavor that the first two gave me that like made me fall in love with the world. And then of course Dark Water Daughter that I read last year, which was absolutely phenomenal. Favorite book of the year, and I'm so excited to get into Black Tide Sun. I was nervous to get into this because I was like, what if I don't like it? Y'all, fuck, this is giving me the same feeling that I had when I was reading Hall of Smoke for the first time. Like it is so beautiful. Her writing, Hannah's writing, is some of the best. I don't know, like the only way I can explain it and my experience reading this book right now is it's like I'm being lulled into a lullaby, and that might be because I'm listening also to the audiobook, and the audiobook narrator is absolutely phenomenal. She's the same one across all of the books. She has a beautiful accent and it's just stunning, and the way that she narrates and tells the story is just, it pairs so perfectly well with the prose that Hannah writes. Oh God, like her world building is some of the best world building I have ever come across. And it's just so, it lulls me like a lullaby, but in the best way, because it's not like I'm falling asleep, but it's just like being wrapped in this really big sense of comfort, even though these are very big, stressful stories. These people are at death's door. Like, the things are happening to them, but just like the prose that Hannah has is unparalleled. And I love it so fucking much. So I'm having a great time with Pillar of Ash, my friends. I am currently on page 151, and I'm calling it for the night because it is 2 a.m., which is standard for me, but I'm going to finish this tomorrow, which is going to be amazing. But yes, maybe from here we'll have an uptick from the TBR. We'll find out. 2 things. 1, I would like you all to know that I am currently selling The Familiar for $20. The person's coming later to get it off Facebook Marketplace. I hated it so much, I just needed to get out of my place immediately. 2nd thing, I just finished Pillar of Ash, and I sobbed. This is so good. Everything about it, so fucking good. And now I need a break from reading for like a bit. Phenomenal. What a phenomenal Saturday. Truly. We gotta talk about some books, my friends. We gotta talk. All right, so it is officially July 14th, and I am struggling with some of these books for this TBR. Earlier, almost tentative DNF for Jonathan Strange. I think I'm just gonna make it a full DNF, guys. I'm not gonna go back to that book. I'm gonna be entirely serious with you. Not a single ounce of my body wants to go back to that book. No. So we're gonna officially DNF Jonathan Strange. And here's the thing. This book, if I finish this book, it's getting a 2-star, maybe. Like, it is boring. It's not a good high fantasy book. Like, it's just nothing is giving. I am bored. Reading this is like pulling teeth. So I am also going to be DNFing The Legacy of Ash. But to be making up for those 2 tomes being DNF'd, because I feel so terrible about DNFing 2 books off this TBR, especially 2 of the biggest books on this TBR, I'm going to add another book off of my 12 Recs from Friends page that I had my friends pick for me at the beginning of the year, because I have also been slacking on this. So I'm going to pick one of these bad boys to finish off, or to add into this list and into this TBR, because I feel so bad DNFing 2 of the biggest books, and I have really low expectations for The Name of the Wind, which is also coming up, and another big chunky one. I'm worried about the rest of this TBR now, because like, if this is how July has gone so far, we've had one amazing hit with Pillar of Ash, and then one that was good with Alat's Away. Everything else has really missed the mark, which just makes me so sad. And I'm also going to read The City Inside today, because it's little, and I feel like I want to be able to finish a fucking book for this TBR, because all of these tomes are just not doing it for me. So I'm DNFing Legacy of Ash officially at 322 pages in. I made it to chapter 31, and I'm done. I am not doing that to myself anymore. What I'm adding into this TBR to make up for the fact that I've DNF'd 2 books for this video already. And okay, I should also clarify, I'm a DNF lover. I love DNFing books. I am always advocating for DNFing, because there is no world in which I think you should make yourself read a book that you are not enjoying. Like, no, there's so many better books out there. You do not owe that book anything. Like, prioritize yourself over the book you're reading. But when it comes to a video like this, because my friends have picked the TBR, and it is a specifically like a challenge for me to read all these books off my TBR in the month, I hate DNFing books for this video, because it hurts me a little bit, because it's like I'm DNFing the picks that my friends have picked. You know, I know that's a stupid idea in my head, but to make up for it, I'm adding another book onto it. So I'm adding Paladin's Grace by T.K. Fisher. This is next, The City Inside. Okay, we have a clean slate for this TBR. I also want to say I'm going on a road trip this week. So the books that I'm going to be bringing with me, I'm definitely going to be bringing my Kobo because it's easy. I'm going to be bringing The Lady for a Duke on this Kobo because I got it through my library on here so that I could bring it with me. And I'm also going to be bringing Little Fish by Casey Plett. I'm going to a literary festival for writers. Casey Plett was at last year's festival. I don't know if she's going to be there at this festival. I don't think so. I'm going to bring it with me. And we're going to bring these 2 books for sure. And then whatever else I'm currently reading, because I don't believe I'm going to have like any time to read. But I'm going to try make time. That is the status of reading as of where I'm at right now. We're adding a book to the TBR, this bad boy, and this is going to be next, The City Inside. Okay, hi friends. It is officially July 16th. I just finished reading The City Inside by Samit Basu, and my head hurts. I don't know what to think about this one, to be entirely honest with y'all. It was definitely an intriguing story, but I think it kind of failed at a number of aspects, and the end was just like unraveled any of the good that was happening, because it just started to not make any sense and literally just started to I don't know. Like it just, I don't even know. Can I even explain this? Like it follows 2 people, which I think is the worst thing that it could do. I think it should have just followed Joey, because then it would have streamlined it a little bit, because I don't see any point to Rudra's story. But it follows Joey, who is a reality controller. In this near future Delhi, this world is dominated by virtual reality and social media and a government that is all controlling but utterly stupid. There's a lot of like references at the beginning to this terror, horror, awful world that they're living in, but they're living in like a safety bubble from it, and it didn't give us enough of that. Like it didn't give us any feet to land on as to like why that is, what happened, what's actually going on. It just kind of mentions it at the beginning and then leaves it. There's a lot of really random plot threads in here that are just left to the wind, and there's a lot of characters that are left to the wind and have like they don't really mean anything to the story other than to act as like plot. But there's also not any real plot to this. Like Joey is a reality controller. She's like the producer essentially for her ex-boyfriend's Flow show, which the Flow is like their kind of social media type thing. In my head, it's like a YouTube, TikTok, Twitch star on steroids, because it's all the time constant gathering of content and constant making of content with lots of editors in the background. And there's one bit in here where they're explaining what like Indy does, Joey's ex-boyfriend, with like he's a star in like many different streams and for different kinds of watchers. Like there are people out there who believe him to be a video game star and a very serious gamer, and then there's other people out there who believe him to be this pro athlete, or like, and then there's like the reality TV type style of stuff. So it's interesting in that way, but there's not enough of a grasp of what that has anything to do with any of the stuff that goes on in this book. Because then we also get Rudra, who is just there. He's useless, spineless, awful. I don't like him at all. He ends up eventually getting wrapped up with some sort of, I want to say a rebellion, but I don't even know if that's what that was. And there's weird tech in here. Like, this book is so confusing, and I don't think I liked it. Like, it didn't have a point by the end of it. The last chapter was just like 5 different little vignettes of like the after of what happens at the end of the full story. It just made me more and more confused, because the last chapter of the actual story was so fucking bad shit. I don't know what happened. I don't understand a single thing that happened in that. And then the last full chapter of the book had all these different vignettes, and they just made me more confused. So like whatever solidifying that was happening in the story completely unraveled for me in the end, and I don't know. Like, it had so many thoughts and so many ideas and themes that it presented. Like there was even a moment of like a man being accused, Indy being accused of rape partway through this, which like completely severs a bunch of stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe we're getting into like what the actual the plot's gonna be. No, because it just like the book just cuts Indy out of it, and it's like it doesn't even matter, which is so bizarre. Like there's so much happening in this book, but there's no plot. We're just following these people. I don't know how to explain this. Did I enjoy it? No. But yes, I I did not enjoy it in the ending, but I enjoyed the reading experience for the first like 60% of it. Because I was like, okay, this is interesting and strange. You're just bringing up interesting conversations about social media and stuff like that. But it never really stuck the landing. And I think what it deserved to be was something longer that actually got to settle in whatever it was trying to do and like actually achieve the nuance and the depth that it was wanting to, because it never really did hit any of those notes. It never fully made sense. Like the whole time I was like, I know kind of what's happening, but I also don't know what's happening at all. So that's what this was. Weird little sci-fi book. Another weird one. Another one that didn't quite hit. Hello friends. I have a reading update for this video. It has been a hot second because I have not read. It is officially literally like a minute away from being July 29th. And I did not read for like 6 or 7 days straight because I went on a road trip. So this weekend I was like, I'm gonna hammer out 4 books. I will say, I did get through 3 of them. So that is good. And then this one was the other one that I wanted to get through. I just need to find an audiobook for it. Anyways, let's do a reading update on these 3 books. So the first one that I finished was Little Fish by Casey Plett. This is a hard-hitting literary fiction about a trans woman going through a very desolately bleak part of her life. A very sad, heartbreaking winter where she first loses her grandma and then loses a very close friend to her. And it's fucking bleak as fuck, but I didn't really love it. It's not the kind of fiction that gets me. It's not the kind of books that get me. It just did nothing for me. And I feel so terrible saying that because this is incredible trans literature. And it's also from a Winnipeg author where I live. I live in Winnipeg. And it's very Winnipeg based, but I was kind of bored the whole time. Nothing was grabbing me. It's just not my kind of literature. It's not my kind of reading. As I get older and read more and more and more, I'm finding that my tastes are becoming more and more like refined to certain things. And this just doesn't quite fall under that, which is sad. Anyways, finish this one. And then I did start the extra book before I went on the road trip. This one that I added in because I DNF'd 2 books on this TBR, 2 of the tomes, right? Got to like page 97. I brought it with me, but I didn't read any of it. I finished it yesterday and it was good. It was definitely enjoyable and lighthearted and funny and engaging mostly. It's just not my favorite of T. Kingfisher's books. I think what she did in this one was better done in Swordheart. I read that one first. But I will say, after I did finish this one, I then went and ordered book 2, 3, and 4. So if that gives you any indication, I did enjoy this. It was definitely a really lovely time. I realized that book 2, 3, and 4 are like following different people, different couples in the series because this is like a romantasy. I love that. I love that so much, especially when it has like a through line plot as well. And there's like some interesting mystery stuff that's brought up in here because it's still fantasy world, right? So this follows Stephen and Grace. Stephen is a paladin for a god that dies at the beginning of this book. He and his like fellow like 7 or 8 other paladins are left bereft without their god. They are also berserker type gods. They have this tide come upon them sometimes that will make them go completely berserk and will kill everything and everyone. They're very dangerous. They will just keep going until they either get knocked out or pass out from exhaustion. Like, and that's also very not possible. Like they just keep going. They are killing machines. So they end up getting taken in by the Church of the Rat in this world. There's different churches and whatever, and each one of the churches has like a different jurisdiction. And the Church of the Rat is also like the lawyers and the judiciary type of people. Church of the Rat also doesn't have any paladins, but they get taken in by this church to be like pseudo bodyguards for different things. That's where they've been. They've been kind of dealing with this PTSD of being part of this really big battle, which is where their god died and all this kind of stuff. And Grace is a perfumer. She witnesses an assassination attempt gone wrong, and Stephen is there and she's running from these people that are trying to get her. In this moment, she's basically like, hide me, help me. And he's a really big, large man in a paladin outfit. And so he's like, okay, and he like shields her with his body, and they pretend to be fucking in an alley because that makes sense. And it's like, it's what makes it like saves her or whatever, because obviously like the 2 people who like run by are like, have you seen this woman? And he's just like, bitch, I'm busy. And she's like making noises and stuff like that. And then they kind of get drawn together in this mystery of the assassinations and these severed heads that are showing up. And she also gets tied up with, she's a perfumer, so she ends up being asked to make a perfume for the prince at one point, and they get kind of brought together in different situations, and he also just really enjoys being around her. It's genuinely like some of the funniest, T. Kingfisher can write some of the funniest prose. I was giggling and kicking my feet in some moments. Stephen knits, which I think is the best thing you can have your giant bodyguard paladin killer do, is have them knit while they're on guard duty, because it's so sweet. And he gives Grace some socks at one point. It's very sweet. So I'm excited to keep reading in this world as well. But I think what is kind of marring my taste for this book just a touch is that I keep feeling like I've read T. Kingfisher's best books, which is Sword, Heart, and Nettle and Bone, for like her fantasy stuff. And both of those books do the bodyguard trope perfectly. And I want more of that. And so reading this, knowing that it had the bodyguard trope in it, again, that's very specific T. Kingfisher-esque bodyguard trope. It's different from like the romance book bodyguard trope, but like what she does is perfect. But I've read it in Sword Heart, and in Sword Heart, it's just perfection. And the banter between Hala and Sarkis in Sword Heart is just so good. And I kept thinking of that when I was reading this, because I was like, I was intrigued by the story, but I wasn't like fully blown and fully drawn in or anything. I wasn't like desperate to read it or anything. And I kept thinking, I'm like, oh, I feel like I've already read her best books. Like everything else kind of pales in comparison. So we'll see how the rest of the series goes though, because I did order the rest of the series. Mainly because I was like worried, because I know it was picked up, traditionally published, and I want all my editions to match. So hopefully my editions match. Anyways, so that's that one. It was okay. It was good. It was enjoyable. I can't wait to read the next ones and continue with the series, but it's not like her best work. And then I read A Lady for a Duke, and I just finished it today. And this was sweet. It was sweet. It was fine. I've come out of this romance book now knowing my taste in romance books a little better. As someone who doesn't read a lot of romance, I know what I want out of a romance, and this did not really give it to me. First of all, it is chunky, okay? She's chunky. She's over 400 pages long, which is the first warning of a romance book. And a lot of people absolutely adore this book. So take my opinion with a teeny tiny little grain of salt, all right? But it was too long. It was too feelings heavy. And we kept dwelling in these moments of feelings. And then when the actual like moments of moving the relationship along in the romance happened, it felt pushed by the plot. Like it was just a decision that was made in the moment. It wasn't like, it didn't even feel like a decision made in the moment. It felt like a decision made by the plot to be like, no, it's fine. I'm okay with being your mistress now. I don't know. Like it felt weird in some of the romance moments, moving the relationship along out of their like agreement that they have. Like their agreement feels so thin. Okay. So I need to explain what this is about. So this is about Viola Carroll, who is a trans woman, the Duke of Green, whatever, Gracewood. I forgot his name and I read it. I literally finished it not even an hour ago. The Duke of Gracewood, who were besties as children, and they went to Waterloo together, the war at Waterloo, and Gracewood believed who Viola was before the war died in the war. And Viola used this belief from everyone that she was in contact with before she was out as a woman, that she was dead, to fully just become a new person and live her life as a woman. Because as a trans woman at this time, that's just not, the societal stuff, right? At this time, this is a historical romance novel as well. And Gracewood is also severely injured in the war. And he's basically become like a recluse for 2.5 years, believing that his best friend is dead and that he tried everything and still failed to retrieve his best friend's body, because obviously he didn't find his best friend's body. At the beginning of this, Viola is a lady's companion to the new Lady Marley, who took over the house that Viola would have had if she was not a woman, She gave up her title, her status, everything to be herself. And so she's a lady's maid to the now Lady Marley. And Lady Marley gets a letter from Miranda, who is Grace Wood's little sister, basically being like, this is what's going on. He's so sad. Like, I'm so sad because he's so sad. And Marley's like, we gotta go fucking fix this. And then Viola meets Grace Wood after two and some years of not seeing him. And he doesn't recognize her, but he recognizes a familiarity in her. And he's a mess. He's on laudanum. He's a drunk. He's being haunted by ghosts. He's got extreme PTSD. All this kind of stuff. It's an immediate attraction and an immediate connection, obviously, because they were such good friends previously. And there's that familiarity there. Even though Viola is like pretending that she doesn't know Grace Wood, and Grace Wood is like, I am so deeply in love with this woman and I've known her for 24 hours. Like, it's this push and pull of that. When Grace Wood does find out who she is, or who she was, and who she is now, and like finds out the truth of her, he's so sweet about it. And also, like, he's not very sweet, but then he becomes very sweet about it, and he becomes very, very wonderful. I love Grace Wood so much, and I really like Viola as well as a character, but I don't like them together very much. I like them together because the book obviously paints a big, like, huge painting of their chemistry, because we don't get any inkling of like sexual activity or anything like that until, I want to say, like 65-70% way through the book. And a lot of the before is just like pining and feelings and going over the same feelings about the situation, about the fact that Grace Wood wants Viola so fucking bad, and Viola is like, we can't, because I am a lady's maid, you are a fucking duke. Like, this is not, no. Also, I can't give you children. And they kind of come to a very meek little agreement where they're like, we'll just be friends. And then that lasts for like maybe 2 days. And then they're like, what if we're like, but they act like they're so in love with each other, and they act like they're so in love with each other, except it's just so feelings heavy, and it's nothing about this book is snappy in any kind of way. And I was just drawn through it like mud, and I hate that I didn't like this very much. Like, it was fine. It was just too fucking long, and it didn't have enough humor and snappiness to it to be the kind of romance book that I like reading. I want to be giggling and kicking my feet. And this man did have wonderful things to say, and it was an incredible read about like the trans experience and the romance experience as a trans woman, especially in this time. I don't know whether or not it's accurate. I don't really care. It's a romance book. Like, accurate to the time. I care that it's accurate about being about a trans woman, obviously. That's terrible if it wasn't represented right. But Alexis Hall is a trans man himself. So, it was a beautiful representation of being trans, and all the feelings in here about being trans and coming to terms with one's body. And the sex scene in here was lovely, but I felt nothing in any part of this book towards the romance or really the story at all. I was just here. I was honestly trepidatious the whole like first 120 pages, because I was like, it's going to be a bad blow up when he finds out that she's his bestie and is trans. Like, it's going to be something. And then it was, and I was like, but it wasn't like that bad. I was just feeling, I was feeling all the bigger feelings before I even got to it, and it didn't really hit those. Anyways, this was fine. If you like romance books and you want to read a good trans historical romance, pick this up, definitely. And check out Alexis Hall's other work, because his other work apparently is great. I have not read any of his other work, but I might pick up some of the shorter stuff if I'm interested into any of it. But this was just too drawn out. It was too bogged down. I wanted it to be snappier, and it was not snappy. It read like a slow slog through the mud for me. I am so out of steam with these books, guys. I don't want to be reading any of these books. I'm going to be entirely honest with you. My Friends Pick My TBR started out so promising. I was so excited about it all. And it has fucking just sputtered, because I no longer want to read any of these books. I don't want to be doing this. And I hate that, because it's a challenge that I set for myself, and I have to fulfill. I have to see it through. I have to, because I'm a dick if I don't. So I'm hoping to read Artemis next. I have very low expectations because nobody likes this Andy Weir book. So I'm gonna give it a try. I hated Artemis so much, I never even updated you. I DNF'd it. I guess I just forgot to film a clip for this vlog for that. I did for a weekend vlog and I threw it across the room. It was bad. The characterization of the main character was really bad. I got like 100 pages in and it was just garbage. I understand why everyone hates that book now. Anyways, on to the next. I got reading updates. It is officially August 5th and we are close to the end, my beautiful friends. I've officially tried 100 pages of A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik and I DNF'd it because I could not get behind the main character. I couldn't get behind the lack of plot. I also couldn't get behind the voice that Naomi Novik was writing in. It all annoyed me, bothered me, drove me up the wall. I was finding it really hard to focus on this book, I'm not gonna lie. I read 100 pages of it and threw it across the room. On some better news, some better, happier news. I am 70% of the way through Name of the Wind, and I'm kind of liking it. So I'm gonna try to explain this in a concise way. I did explain it in my weekend vlog that I just put up, I put up a couple weeks ago. I don't know when this is going up, but I love high fantasy. You guys know that's my favorite genre, especially old man fantasy. And this is giving, it's giving like it wants to be something epic and intense and stuff like that. It is, but it's not as dark as I thought it would be. Like it's giving Patrick Rothfuss wanted to try to be like Robin Hobb and J.R.R. Tolkien. Kind of failed, but also kind of made his own thing, because I gotta say his writing in here kind of cheeses me out and gives me the ick sometimes, and his treatment of women in here is god-awful. And there's only really 2 women characters in here, and one of them is disabled and treated like a child, and then the other one is Kvothes' love interest, so of course is treated like an object and a beautiful gem to be won and gained by men, you know? So that's not very fun. But there's something about the storytelling in here that is sucking me in. Yesterday I read this for like 5 hours and I couldn't stop. I was so in it that like I was reading it during dinner. I had the audiobook in and I was like zoned out completely drying dishes for my parents, and like I don't know if they spoke to me at all. Like I was just in it. I love when a book does that. It's so rare. Books do that for me now. Like being sucked into a book is really nice. And I am enjoying this, and I like the frame narrative. The Name of the Wind, if you don't know what it's about, is about this legendary hero, I don't know, this big ass guy who's done a bunch of shit. It's him being found by a chronicler who is someone who gets stories, I guess, who's been hunting him down to get his story or whatever. Kvothe has been masquerading as a barman under the name of Coat. He tells this chronicler that he is going to say his story and he's gonna do it over 3 days. And so book 1 is 1 day. This is 1 day of Kvothe telling his story. 1 evening, 1 night of him telling his story. And then book 2 is day 2. And then book 3, which we will never see, is day 3. The fact that Patrick Rothfuss hasn't released book 3 is honestly a crime. My man, just fucking release the book. You know what I mean? It shouldn't take you this fucking long. It's the same with George R.R. Martin. Homie wrote himself into a hole and like they did something wrong and now they're scared. They just need to fucking release their shit or get help or something. They just need to fucking do it, you know? It's driving me crazy. They've had enough time because they've written other books in it. It's fine. I'm not gonna get on the topic of it. But this, I like a frame narrative. I do enjoy a good frame narrative, especially when it's done like this, where we keep coming back to the frame of it all, where it is Kvothe, Bast, and this chronicler sitting in, Bast is his little body, I don't know, sitting in a inn together as Kvothe is telling this story. And every time we come back to one of these interludes throughout the entire thing, we have these moments where either Bast or the chronicler will ask Kvothe a question, which kind of leads to an insight on how these people who have known Kvothe as this legend and not as he grew up, it leads to how they perceive him. And it also gives insight on how Kvothe perceives himself as this legend afterwards and perceives his story afterwards. And it's also very interesting to get all of Kvothe telling his story in first person, because then he's the narrator, he's telling the story, he's telling his side of the story, right? You always have to remember that it is a one-sided narrative that you're getting from this. You are not getting anyone else's anecdotes throughout this entire thing on Kvothe's story. So he could be lying out of his ass the entire time, or tweaking the story, making it better, because there's a lot in here about telling stories. There's a moment in here where Kvothe meets a storyteller when Kvothe is a boy on the streets, and the storyteller is asked questions by some of the kids, but Kvothe stays and asks him a question later. It's like, is this story true? And the man is like, all stories are true, but they're all bent to tell stories in the right way. And there was something very similar when Kvothe's father, because he's from a troubadouring troupe type thing. In my head, they're like a circusy troupe. His father was a bard as well, and was like a writer of all these epics and all that kind of stuff. And in telling stories like that, it's this big, you twist it to make it a good story. So I'm wondering how Kvothe is twisting this, because you can't tell a story completely truthfully. You just can't as a narrator. It's just not, you can't. Because memory makes it automatically slightly untruthful, because you remember it in the way that you remember it. And your memory is fickle. So I'm interested to see how this is going to end. I have, 30-ish% of the way through to go. That chunk left. We will see how it goes. I am interested in reading book 2 at the moment, but not like I'm going to run out and get it, because I know I'm probably not going to get around to it for a long time if I do. And also, we're never getting book 3. So if I want to feel completely dissatisfied about never finishing a series, this is going to be one that I'm going to, eventually never pick up. But yeah, so it is interesting. It's doing the thing, but currently it's sitting at like a 3.5, 4 star for me. It's not blowing me away in any way. It's just, it is doing the thing. I wish it was darker, to be honest. I wish it was more fantasy, but it is giving, as I said, it's giving Robin Hobb's like Fitz in the Farseer. It's like he's trying to emulate that slow churning tale of it all. And it is also a school narrative. If you want a good school narrative, kind of like this, read The Will of the Many, because it's so much fucking better than this, and then what this was trying to do. Or even The Poppy War. Yeah, The Poppy War is a school narrative for the first chunk of it, and it honestly does the school narrative better than this did, even though we've been in the school narrative for a long time. Because his entire goal was to get to university. That's the goal of the book, so I'm assuming the book is his university experience. As so far, it's that experience. I also have to keep reminding myself that Kvothe is like 15 in this book. As he's telling a story, he's like an old man. Kvothe in the story starts out at like age 10, and now he's like 15, 16, and he's getting like, the treatment of women in here is garbage, so I'm not looking forward to any more of that. But as so far, I'm not hating it, which is honestly a fucking relief, because DNFing another fucking book for this video is insane. But after that, we only have this one left. Hello friends, we're back with the final book of this series. Did I update you when I finished Name of the Wind? I just checked my footage that I have on my phone. I did not update you with Name of the Wind. So I finished Name of the Wind. I did it. Finished that book. I did talk about it in a couple of my reading vlogs, and it has been a number of days now, because I am now in the final book. I'm in the final stretch. We're reading Inheritance today. And it is officially August 17th, so this has gone on for far too fucking long. Name of the Wind. Finished it. I enjoyed it. I do have my problems with that book, namely with some of the writing, with some of the representation of disability, with some of the women in it, and the fact that Kvothe is a special snowflake and everything is too easy for him. But then I do have to remember that, one, it is a frame narrative and the story is told to us from Kvothe himself, so he might not be entirely truthful about everything because he is the narrator and memory is never truthful, never entirely truthful. As I was reading that book, I kept getting sucked into the story, and it's been a long time since I've read a book that completely and utterly wouldn't let me go from its clutches like that. I'm getting that again with this one, reading Inheritance, and maybe it's just because I haven't read a properly good high fantasy in a while that just sucks you right into the story. That's kind of where I'm at with that one. It was good. It was fine. I do plan on continuing with the series. I do plan on reading it because I want to know more about Kvothe's story. And I already know I'm going to be so pissed off because there's no third book, and there probably will never be. I still am very confused as to why people are so obsessed with it. And it's like a favorite book because there's nothing surprising about it. There's nothing overly insane about it. It's not like, I don't know, there's just nothing special about this book. It's just like, it's an okay book, in my opinion. Anyways, I gave that one 3.5 stars. And it's done. Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. A lot of my thoughts on this one are going to be saved for the series video that this is for, because that's where all the thoughts should be for this series, because that is literally a video on this series. I'm finally finishing that video as well. Once I finish this book, that video is going to also be done, which is iconic and amazing of me. August is the month that everything's just going to come together. It's going to be great. Anyways, so I am on page 571 of this story. I'm going to also try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, because this is the final book in the Inheritance cycle by Christopher Paolini, which starts with Eragon, right? So this book, I think, out of the 4 in this series, is my 3rd favorite. So my ranking goes Eragon, eldest, this one, and then Brissinger. One of the main things about Brissinger that I didn't love, which if you watched my February, My Friends Pick My TBR, that was in that one. I ended up reading it in March, but it was still in that video. One of the things I didn't like about that one is that it was kind of wibbly wobbly in the plot department, because it's a war book. It didn't have straightforward, like, this is the hook of the story like the first 2 did. The first 2 had a beautiful hook, a direction. We knew what the promise was of the story, and that was given to us. The 3rd book didn't really have a promise of a story. It just kind of meandered a bit until near the end, when Eragon finally was like gathering the knowledge he needed, gathering the tools he needed for the war that's happening, and like this preparation for the big end battle that they know is coming. This is a continuation of that. It's another war book. So Christopher Paolini has written 2 war books back to back in this series, and this one's much better than Brissinger, for sure. It just feels a little bit more purposeful in its plotting and stuff like that, because of the way that I explained this in the other video, but it's to do with like finishing up of a story. This is actually definitely teaching me stuff about the conclusion of stories and wrapping up a series, because I don't, as you guys know, I don't read the last books of series very often. I don't get to them very often. I've only finished maybe 40 some odd series in my life. So actually getting to the final book in a series and seeing how Christopher, now like seeing the whole series in retrospect, and seeing how Christopher has mapped out Eragon's growth and Eragon's story in a plot structure way, with the way that this is like the 11th hour, and you're actually coming together and you're gaining the knowledge you need to defeat this foe, and you're gaining the tools that you need, and you're getting the people together, and it's like slowly the dominoes are falling into place. So it's making a lot of sense, and it's definitely giving me a more of an appreciation for what Christopher has done with the character of Eragon, because I'm still bitter about what he did at the beginning of Brissinger, because the choice to make Eragon do what he did to Katrina's father still is so out of character for me, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. Other than that, everything else, Eragon's character is fabulous. The way that Christopher has crafted him and made him grow and all that kind of stuff. I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying the read. It's very good. It's very good, and I'm losing myself to it. I've been reading it for literally 8 hours today straight. The fact that it's taken me 8 hours to get to page 571 is a little concerning, though, because usually I can do 100 pages in an hour when it's like a younger reader book, but maybe this one's just a little different. What I've been doing is I've been crocheting a project and working on a project. So that's literally all I've been doing today is making my way through this chunk and working on a crochet project. So that's where I'm at. I have this much left to go. I'm gonna see how much more I can get done tonight, because it's almost 11:30. I will probably finish it tomorrow, but... Hello, friends. Welcome to the end of this video. I literally just filmed the end of my series video for this, because I finished Inheritance last night. I read it all in 11 hours. I stopped at the end. But I'm done. And I'm officially done this entire fucking challenge. I can't even hold up all the books for this challenge, because I've sold so many of them and gotten rid of so many of them from this challenge, because I think this, even though I started it thinking it was going to be the best My Friends Pick My TBR, I think this was the worst one. I honest to God think this was the worst one. My July reading was a shit show. I mean, it's August 18th today that I'm finishing this, because I just didn't want to read any of the books because they were all not good. But that's on me for having them on my TBR at all in the first place. Anyways, let's go through it, friends. Also, for all my thoughts on Inheritance specifically, you will have to wait for the series video for this series to come out, which is going to come out like one of the next couple videos after this video. Let's go through what I rated each one of these books for this. So originally we had Jonathan Strange, A Deadly Education, Legacy of Ash, The City Inside, Latsaway, Little Fish, Artemis, Pillar of Ash, The Familiar, Lady for a Duke, Inheritance, and Name of the Wind. We had 12 books on this entire TBR. Started out with Jonathan Strange. I read 500 and some odd pages of that book and DNF'd it because I just could not. And then that started an entire downhill slide. A Lat's Away by Darcy Little Badger, I ended up giving 3.5 stars. I think it was a good little read. And it felt like a breath of fresh air because I was reading Jonathan Strange at the time and I just needed something that was actually good to read. And it was definitely a fairly good read. I highly recommend it as a book. Then I read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which I gave 2 stars to and immediately sold the next day on Facebook Marketplace because I think it was one of Leigh Bardugo's worst books, if not her biggest failure. I have not read all of her books, but I've read most of them. And I think it's her biggest failure as an author. With the expectation of readers and what she has shown to readers in her books and what she can do, and then giving us that? Then I read Pillar of Ash, which was the only 5-star of this entire video and the only 5-star of July. I fucking loved it. It was another end to a series. I finished up the entire 4 Pillars series with that one. It's a companion series by Hannah Long, some of my favorite fantasy books of all time. That one was phenomenal. I loved it. Then The City Inside by Samit Basu. That one I gave 2.5 stars to because it started out with promise. It's a dystopian book that has a lot of things going on in the world. It's setting up a lot of different things and it just doesn't fulfill any of these promises that it sets up. And it just left me confused in a bad way. Then I read Little Fish by Casey Plett, also 2.5 stars. Just was not for me and I'm trying to get rid of it as well. It's not for me. It's not my kind of a book. Then I read Paladin's Grace because I had DNF'd so many books. Oh, I was also, in the meantime, DNF'd Legacy of Ash. Because I DNF'd 2 of the biggest books on this TBR, I decided to add in another book from My Friends Give Me 12 Recommendations for me to read throughout the year. The 12 recs from 12 friends. I decided to pick a book off of that and add it into the TBR. And I liked that one, gave it 4 stars, and ended up buying the rest of the series because that's how much I was like, please, I need more like this. And T. Kingfisher is one of my favorites. Then I read A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. This one also was not for me. I gave it 3 stars. I understand why people love it, but I want my romance books to be quicker, snappier, not as long, not as broody, not as in your feelings. I want to be kicking my feet and giggling, you know? So that's what I did in July. And then I also DNF'd Artemis in July, which was another one of this. It was just straight up bad. It was bad. Like the depiction of our main character, who was a young woman, was so egregious. It was bad. I understand why people hate that book now. I came into August and immediately started August with a DNF. We DNF'd A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, which I have since sold on Facebook Marketplace. And then I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I gave 3.5 stars, and I did enjoy this. The storytelling sucked me in, and I enjoyed the narrative enough that I kept wanting to come back to it. So, like, that's something. Finally, we finished with Inheritance, which I gave 4.5 stars. So at least we are ending on an okay note, despite the shit in the middle and at the beginning because Jonathan Strange. But like, what a shit show of a Friends Pick My TBR. I am glad that I do these videos, truly, because it helps me shrink my TBR, get books off my shelves, read what I own. But I think from here on, we're gonna probably revisit it again in February because I like doing that in February at the beginning of the year. It's a good push, but I think I'm gonna try to do a twist on it. I need to think of what I'm gonna do differently in these videos going forward because this is my Friends Pick My TBR like 8 or 9 at this point. So I need to rethink things, do a little mix up of stuff, and see what I'm gonna do with this series going forward. Either way, thank you to all my friends for participating and picking the 12 books for me, even though a lot of them were an absolute shit show. That is not on you. That is on me for having them on my TBR in the first place. And I thank you for having me read them and get them off my TBR and realize that they need to not be on my shelves anymore. I'm leaving it here, and I will catch you in another video very, very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.